This week on the Fifth Trooper podcast.
That's right, folks. I have effects. I have effects now and music cues. So
he knows how to use them.
yeah, so get used to that.
Welcome to the Fifth Trooper podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Fifth Trooper podcast. In this series, we're going to be talking about Star Wars Legion. My name is Jay Shalansky, and this is my good friend and the only man I know who always has the high ground, Nick Allen. On today's podcast, we're going to be interviewing Kevin Valliere from Imperial Discipline blog. And then we're also going to be talking about the list that Nick and I are playing right now and also our play styles. So first up on today's cast, we actually pre-recorded Kevin's interview, and we're going to cut to that now. We're very excited to have our next guest, Kevin Valliere, who runs Imperial Discipline blog. Kevin's also a Legion player. Kevin, thank you so much for joining today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So to begin, I'd like to have you maybe talk about yourself a little bit, discuss any games you're into. I also saw on your website that you play X-Wing as well.
I haven't in a while. Legion has sort of usurped X-Wing for me, but even X-Wing was really my first tabletop experience. I think as a kid, I once bought it's like a Warhammer 40K pack. It's whatever species is like a cross between dinosaurs and the Zerg. And I remember trying to paint it and failing miserably. And that was the closest I ever got to tabletop until about a year and a half ago, I guess. I picked up X-Wing on a whim and found a pretty good community here in New York. So that sort of paved the way for Legion for me.
Yeah, and I know Nick likes having the pre-painted figures of X-Wing too, and it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, that was when I first got into Legion, I sort of assumed that the hobby aspect would get in the way of the gameplay that I was really looking forward to. And so I guess it's sort of ironic that it has sort of done a 180 where I very much appreciate the hobby aspect at this point.
Yeah, and I know for a lot of people, I think having that many miniatures with Legion is a lot more attainable than it is having, like 100 miniatures with Warhammer. And also, not mentioning putting that all on the table. It's just a lot and can be overwhelming at times.
Yeah, I always love, whenever we're playing Legion next to like a really big table of 40K action. And it's so nice to look at, but it feels so much more chaotic to me. And I'm sure once you're used to it, it's totally different. I mean, I have such a little frame of reference for it, but just the amount going on. One of the things that I like Legion so much is because it seems simpler to me, and I definitely need that in a war game. I'm not the most strategic person. So the fewer things going on, the more likely I'm going to be to do okay at it.
Yeah, and I think that's going to lead to a lot more people jumping in because of that. And it'll really help us to expand the player base to people who may not necessarily play war games.
Yeah, that's the hope. I mean, it's sort of like, how do you beat Magic as a card game? How do you beat Warhammer as a tabletop game? There's so much, mythos and reputation built up around it, and just like the amount that people have invested. I mean, certainly I'm not a person who excels in business either, but I feel like that's got to be a really big question, is like, once people have invested it so much in Warhammer, how do you get them to come over to Legion?
Well, I definitely think that the Star Wars brand is going to help, even though people really love Warhammer and the game. Yeah, I think Star Wars would absolutely draw them into coming over to Legion.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I was drawn in definitely by just loving Star Wars, and that was sort of like, okay, I'm willing to give this a try now. And then I do feel like a lot of it is pretty intuitive, and that was part of why I started the blog, was sort of helping people get to that point where it's like, oh, okay, I see how this makes sense. I'm not sure I would have dived into it if I hadn't.
Yeah, exactly. What list are you playing right now for Legion?
My preferred list right now is pretty much a naked Veers with a totally kitted out ATST General Weiss, 3 guns, and then 4 stormtroopers with BLT and 2 snow troopers with extra trooper, flamethrower, and impact grenades. I think that's my current 792 or something list. I love all of the tools that I have available to me in that list. For the longest time, I didn't run the ATST with General Weiss or anything but like one or two guns. And then I finally got into a groove where I was playing the 4-game Silent Hail operation with a buddy of mine up here in New York. And we the last 2 games I did the General Weiss ATST, and it just ruined his day. And I really fell in love with it.
Yeah, we've been talking on the podcast about how, I think Vader and the ATST are going to start making big comebacks into the game. And it's weird, somebody was up on the boards the other day I was talking to, and they said they believe it's because, it took us a while to learn how to play the game. And now that we're all kind of picking up how the game works, that we can see the value in the ATST and in Vader.
Yeah, absolutely.
So have you been able to run this at any tournaments yet?
I haven't really done any tournaments yet. We have a pretty small player base here in New York City so far, which I think is just sort of a product of space and resources. I didn't even have a desk to paint stuff on until about a year ago. So I'm looking forward to. There's a great store out in New Jersey called Highlander that gets a ton of people, and I'm really hoping to get out there for one of their big tournaments and play. But we have more like casual 4 to 6 person tournaments, once or twice a month, and I feel like for the most part my ATSD is done pretty well there. But usually, like if I'm going to play Tabletop Simulator, I'm going to try something weird and just see what happens.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Somebody posed a question up on the Star Wars Legion Facebook page about how many players everyone's been seeing out, and it doesn't seem like this is big market driven at all. It seems like all of us, no matter where we are, you being in New York too, that we've been seeing like maybe 4 to 6 players, no matter the location or how many stores are there.
Yeah, I was sort of like equally heartened and a little bit disheartened to see that, because we kept comparing ourselves to New Jersey, just seeing like, oh man, they're getting like a dozen or 2 dozen people out for a tournament or a casual night or something. So I was like, what is the reason that New York City is sort of floundering? But I also know that we have a bunch of people in the local scene who play X-Wing and like have purchased the core set but haven't had time or space to paint yet or whatnot. And so I don't know. It's not something I know. Plenty has been said about the state that Legion is currently in by people who know more about it than me, but it's not something that I worry about. I guess we've got a core group at least, and I feel like as we get more units, as Chewie and Palpatine come out, and definitely when we go back to the prequel era, I think it's going to draw a lot of people in.
Yeah, well, and I think that leads me right into my next question. For anybody who doesn't know, Kevin runs imperialdiscipline.blog, and man, this is such a great site. And, I know that you've said that you've designed it for beginners, but I mean, I've been playing for a while now, and I even enjoy reading all the articles on the site, and I find them really helpful. So what was kind of the idea behind starting the blog for you?
Oh, first, thank you. That is really kind. It's nice to hear that. I don't know. It just felt like, kind of we were talking about just a minute ago. I didn't know too much about wargaming outside of X-Wing. And so when I was thinking about going into Legion, I had so many questions, and it felt like this really huge barrier to buying into the game. And I didn't even really decide that I was going to play Legion until a couple of days after it was released. And one of the local stores had a demo, and I played it and was just like, oh, this is totally rad. I absolutely want to give this a try. And then, a month or 2 in, I was just like, it would have been nice if I had had a resource to ease me into this. And I just sort of had that, moment of inspiration. I was like, well, I could write this. If I'm going to write towards beginners, it's not going to hurt to come from a beginner standpoint. So that was definitely the intention for the blog. The fact that I have had people who, really enjoy the terrain pieces or really enjoy the rules explanations has been a really a big surprise to me and a nice added benefit. But, just kind of hoping to ground it as like, if I were totally new to this, whether it's Legion or Wargaming, and I just wanted to figure out what the heck I'm supposed to do, where do I go?
Well, yeah, I think, it definitely does that. I think that the articles are well explained and precise. And, they really explain the rules. Like, for instance, I just read the one about cover, and I thought that you really went over that very well.
Thank you. Yeah, that was surprisingly hard to get right. Even when I posted that article, I found out that I had been playing something wrong for months, where I thought each suppression token gave you one additional cover up to two, not just like a blanket one cover. I all the New York City guys pinged me on Facebook afterwards and were like, wait, you told us. I was like, I'm sorry, I know. So, it certainly helps me learn the rules too. But
well, dude, I'll tell you, you're not the only one. We've been playing that one wrong for a little while, and I think I've read that a few other places we're doing that wrong as well. I think it's just one of those rules that kind of got lost in the ether of the rule book a little bit.
Yeah, I think that one is currently sitting at my most viewed post right now, slightly above, strangely, the post on clambering and height. But there were some great Reddit posts following that or commenting on my blog saying, like, here's some other examples you should include. So I'm going to try and here in a few weeks have like an advanced cover article, because I think that's worthwhile too. Going over those situations that don't quite make sense, like, oh, my unit leader can't see Luke, but the four other guys in the squad can. They're going to shoot, even though they have, totally open field of vision on him, because the unit leader can't see him behind a wall. You get cover for the shot because you always measure through the unit leader, and it's just like unintuitive stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think going along with that, another one that's really tough is with terrain. If you're trying to shoot up at an elevated unit, making sure with the line of sight rules, we're seeing the unit's base and how much of the unit you see.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly in a better place now than it was before they did the FAQ. I love that now my ATST can be up close and can see over a barricade and not have to worry about cover. Like, that was definitely a necessary rule change. But I think there's still a lot of, it's more streamlined. You have to have something to go by for the official ruling, but it's certainly not perfect. So it's, it's worth diving into for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, with everything that you've been learning about and writing about, how has it changed your play style when you've been going out and playing?
I'm not sure it's changed my playing style. Like I said, I am not a strategic person. I have very intentionally stayed away from, some of the other blogs that are putting out some really, really fantastic articles about numbers and about strategy. If anything, I think my blog has changed my appreciation for the hobby aspect, and how for a lot of people, like, the playing of the game is in far second place. The painting and the crafting is sort of the main thing. And, I certainly wouldn't have seen myself looking around my apartment for things that I could use to make terrain. I've got all these random bits and scraps of things that I'm trying to turn into something else. I started, keeping cardboard tubes just to see what I could do with them. I've got several Pringle cans that I want to try and turn into stuff like that. That's the thing that's changed most for me. Is I always looked at the people in X-Wing who painted their ships, and I was like, that's amazing. I could never do that. And the fact that I'm now attempting at least to do it is shocking in no small amount. But it's also really gratifying. I love just sort of turning off all the other distractions and sitting down to paint for a little bit.
Yeah, for me too, I love building terrain as well. And, I think going along with that is definitely the basis for the miniatures too. That's a huge part for me, is how those are built and designed.
Yeah, I haven't gone back to it, but back when the Discord was having their painting competition, and I was like, I'm going to try something way out of my comfort zone. And I did the Scarif beach bases where my ATRT and then a few of my troopers had waves as part of, sort of the beach scene. That was sort of hard to get right and to learn. And I'm so glad that I tried it, because not only was it super fun to, create this and be able to look at it afterwards, but, for the many hundreds of that I've sunk into video games in my life, it's nice to spend a lot of time on something and have an end product that I can show people and be proud of and use in the future. I think that's one thing that I didn't really think about. Oh, I made this, and I'm proud of that, and that's a nice feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. What are your top tips for beginners? I know that's a pretty broad brush we're painting with there, but for someone who's just started or maybe saw the game being played at a store, what are a few of your tips for them?
Sure. So I'll say top tip for number one. Try and get a friend to go in on a core set or on two core sets. Pick one side and go with that. I think the value in buying two core sets is so just absurdly high compared to the price of the individual units that it's absolutely worth it if you can find a buddy who is willing to split that with you. So I think I saw it on Amazon for 70 for the core set yesterday. For $70, you split it, you get amazing value for one core set plus another core set that you split with a friend.
Yeah, we completely agree with that. We actually did something very similar to that and split it. Nick plays Rebels and I play Empire.
It's funny, despite that definitely being a piece of advice, it is not the path that I went. So I feel like I'm more qualified to give it because I'm like, I should have done this a long time ago. But it's too late for me now. Yeah, so that's definitely number one. I think number two is, I think number two is just like, feel free to go slow. Don't feel like you have to buy the core set and get it out in a week. It took me a month and a half, I think, before I finally finished painting that first core. Even just the Imperial side, and even just sort of going through that slow process, I learned so much. And sort of as a corollary to that, number three is Null Oil is to me the only like indispensable product that I have. I will switch between Army War Painter paints and Vallejo paints and Citadel paints, but like Null Oil is just, it really is magic in the bottle.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think just to add on to your number two, as of right now, it doesn't look like you're going to be required to have a painted army to put it on the field and to play. And I think that might be really attractive to newer players that are going to be playing this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there's anything wrong with someone, paint all of your Imperials white or black or whatever, just spray them and get them on the field. It's obviously I'm going to advocate for painting. I think painting is half of the fun of Legion, but if that's not what you want to do, then feel free to just spray paint it, get some gold spray paint or something, live it up, do you?
Well, yeah, and I think even it's like if you're looking at a tournament and you want to go play, I don't think there's that pressure to have a fully painted, decked out army in order to go. You can just show up and start playing.
Yeah, and maybe y'all know this better than me, but I mean, does FFG have those same rules, or like, do we know for sure what they're going to require out of painting? Because it is nice if you can just sort of show up and have a spray painted army that you just got the last week that you really want to play.
So as of right now, at Gen Con and Nova Open, they didn't have any requirements. I don't think they're going to put requirements on painting. If anything, they might do like one or two colors for the army. I heard that somewhere that may be a thing, but it's not really FFG style to put requirements on people. They try to keep things as casual as possible.
Sure. That's a good tip. Number 4 actually is don't feel like you have to assemble your stuff before you paint it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I feel it now. I'm curious to hear how y'all do it, because I feel like this is something that people get really attached to. I glue my miniatures to the base before I spray paint, and then paint them like while they're on the base, but I won't glue like arms or weapons or whatever until I am done painting.
Yeah, I think for me, it all depends on the figure. Sometimes I'll have the figure completely together and then spray the figure and the base separately. That seems to work for me. And, also like it depends on if I'm doing stormtroopers versus rebel troopers. The stormtroopers, to me, I try to put the whole figure together, put them on the base after I've done the base, and then paint them, just because they seem easier that way to me. You still got to be careful of the crevices and stuff. But overall, that's okay to put together. And then the rebel troopers are I paint separately just because they're a little bit more complicated. But I really think it's just whatever your personal kind of preference is with that stuff.
Yeah, I'll kind of do that piecemeal as I go through. I'm actually looking at some bikes that I just purchased that I am painting a la Inferno Squad, and I have not finished painting them, but like before I got on the call, I was like, I have to visualize how they're going to look. And so even though they're not glued or done painting, I have them sitting on top of the bikes. just so I kind of know how it's supposed to look and I can scheme a little bit.
Yeah, and I guess I would say that it's all individuals, right? If it feels right to you, there's no wrong way to paint as long as you're happy. So far, what's been the most rewarding thing for you with your work on the blog?
I mean, I feel like the answer is coming on a podcast, which I've never done before. This is still very exciting to me. That's definitely the selfish version of the answer. I think the unselfish answer is as cliche as it sounds. Anytime I get a comment on like the FFG forums or on Reddit or via email, someone just saying like, "Hey, been looking at your articles. This was really helpful to me. Thank you." I don't need to be the best blog or the best player or whatever. It's just nice to know that all the time that I've put in is in fact helping people get into the hobby, because that's exciting to me. I like sharing the passion that I feel for this game and for especially the hobby side of it with other people. And just the fact that I've helped a few has really spurred me forward to try some weird things that do or don't work with most people.
Yeah, well, and I think that's really important what you and some of the other guys are doing with these blogs is, if someone is able to search up Star Wars Legion, they'll be able to find your blog and we'll be able to build this community and keep the momentum going, And I don't feel like, especially with Legion and the way you guys are doing it, that it's this thing that's setting up on an ivory tower that's inaccessible to people.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I'm looking at stats for my blog, of course, it's nice to see that my posts on Facebook or Reddit or the FFG forums, whatever, are getting traction. Like, that's great. But anytime that I get like a half dozen people who typed, Star Wars Legion into Google and somehow got to my blog, like, that's really exciting for me, because that to me is like signaling this person doesn't know what it's about, is interested, and they're finding their way to me because of that. And that's exactly what I want. So I agree that like pulling the new people in who don't even know like what questions they should really start to ask yet. That's what I want to reach.
Okay, so looking into the future, what do you see the future holding for you with your blog and with Legion?
That's a good question. I feel like you sent me these questions beforehand, and I saw that one, and I was like, I should figure that out, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I didn't mean to make you have an existential crisis.
No, it's a good thing to think about. I don't really have like an end goal at this point. I think the longer I do the blog, the more likely I am to try some weirder stuff, or try stuff that may not fit precisely within that like beginner framework. I've already scaled my post back. For the first 2 or 3 months, I was doing 2 posts a week just to get some content out there and feel like I had something of substance with my blog. And now I've moved back to 1 post a week just so I have more time for bigger terrain builds or more in-depth rules articles. So I think that's just sort of where I want to be, is like continuing to find whatever cool thing I can introduce people to, whether that's beginners or people who have been around for a little bit, but have never tried to make their own terrain, or have never tried to do a camo paint scheme. And I think as long as I'm learning, I'll have something to say on the blog, and I'd still have a lot left to learn about wargaming and hobby, mini painting and all of that.
Yeah, man. Well, like I said, I really like the blog, and I know I've heaped some praise on you, but I really like the work you've been doing.
Thank you.
And yeah, and it's really encouraging when we got guys like you that are out on the front lines, really, getting the community going.
That is really kind of you to say.
Absolutely, man. We are really excited about your blog and to see what you got coming out in the future. And of course, we're going to keep encouraging people to visit the site, and that's imperialdiscipline.blog again. And thank you for coming on again, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, so that was our interview with Kevin. He's a really cool dude. I love his website, and I know we gave him a bunch of praise in the interview, but I think he deserves all of it. I think that site's amazing.
Yeah, he was a really cool dude. It was a really fun interview.
Yeah, and I think anybody out there, and I said it during the interview too, but like I really meant it, that I think even whether you're new or even if you're a veteran, that site is well worth a visit and a read. he's very detailed and concise, and it's just a really good read.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So okay, so now last podcast we had Evan on, and he had gone to Nova, and one of the things that was pointed out to us that we were actually called a couple rules wrong, and actually Kyle from Never Tell Me the Odds sent me a note and let me know a couple of the rules changes and pointed out where we could find them, and so that really encouraged us to start a brand new segment on the podcast that we're hoping we will continue moving forward, and we're affectionately calling it We're Doing It Wrong. That's right, folks.
Very
I have effects now and music cues.
And he knows how to use them.
Yeah, so get used to that. So in all seriousness, no, we really thank Kyle. He sent us a note with a couple of things that Evan ran into at Nova that he was surprised by, and then we discussed briefly, and we clearly had it all wrong. So that's why we're going to start doing this. We're doing it wrong. And hopefully we could do this every week, and we're going to try to pick out, some different rules and things that maybe we're playing wrong that we look into.
Some of these gray areas where it's not quite certain which way we're going to go.
Yeah, agreed. And, so the two rules that we're discussing this week, Kyle pointed these out to us. They're on the Community Fantasy Flight website, and we'll post that website up. If you don't already know it, we'll put it up on the website and on the podcast page. But basically, the first question was, when a commander equipped with the upgrade card Battle Meditation is issuing orders, in addition to bypassing the usual restriction of range 1 to 3, can an order be issued to a unit or unit type that is not listed on the command card that was played? So the example of this would be if the command card is Son of Skywalker, and Luke Skywalker is equipped with Battle Meditation, he can choose to issue an order to a friendly ATRT unit instead. So now, Nick, we discussed this a little bit, and for someone who plays Luke and plays both of those, how's that change things for you now that you could play it that way?
It definitely makes things more interesting. Like, that's a lot more than I can do. And when we talked about it on the podcast, I'm like, that doesn't sound right, because the command card specifically says Luke, and normally FFG is really clear about that stuff. But after the podcast, I went through and I read the card, and I'm just like, this is really unclear based on the actual upgrade card how this works, and it could go either way. And it goes the way of you can issue it to any unit, which is really awesome. Because the main reason I played Battle Meditation is that there's that unit that I need to have activated, and he's way over on the other side of the map, and that's what Battle Meditation does. And this just opens up more doors to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think I was at a disadvantage a little bit with that conversation just because I don't play Rebels. I've seen them play, and I know the cards, but when we were talking about it, I wasn't really thinking of it in those terms. I was just like, that just doesn't sound right. But, I mean, it makes that crazy strong, and it changes, I think, how I look at Luke now again. Like, I knew he was strong, and I knew he's dangerous on the battlefield, but that combo too with Battle Meditation now is just, man, he has high value for his point cost.
Yes. I don't think you're going to use it with Son of Skywalker very often, but his 3-pip one, I think is going to I will use it with even more. With the 3-pip one, I don't necessarily need Luke to have the order token. I just want him to have the dodge. That's usually what I want it there, and I want to be able to give 3 units their command tokens.
Yeah.
Order tokens, right?
Yeah, and I definitely think, yeah, it shakes things up. And I think the ATRT example was pretty cool. That was on the website. So,
okay, specifically pointing out a non-trooper unit.
Yeah. So next, the next question that we had last time was Evan was talking about he was playing someone with Vader, and he got force pushed off of terrain, and they were trying to figure out how that would work as far as damage, and they had settled on clamoring or climbing. And what happened is we got linked to it on the community board, and it says, can force push force an enemy trooper to perform a climb or clamor move? And the answer is no. The game effect allows that the effect allows is for a force to unit to move speed X move. That unit performs a full or partial standard move with speed equal to lower than X. Climbing, clamoring are not standard moves and thus cannot be performed in place of a speed X move. Now, I play Vader. I've never come across that as something, but it's good to know. Now I know I can't pull someone off I can't pull them off of the terrain because it would force a climber clamor move. So,
from a rule standpoint, it makes sense. From a thematic standpoint, it kind of sucks. Like, I'd like to really push units off of a cliff. That would be great. But I guess I'll just settle for pushing units off of the board.
Right. Yeah, and I guess the only situations I've run into where terrain and force push have come into play is like if they're behind barricades and I'm just pulling, pulling them on the other side of the barricade. That's really the only interaction I've had. So it's just good to know, especially as the terrain gets a little bit more intricate and complicated.
And the units become more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely coming, right? We're definitely getting more complicated units. But anyway, so we're doing it wrong. We would appreciate that if you hear us say something that doesn't sound right or that we've clearly gotten wrong, send us a note on any of our social media platforms. We're on Reddit. We're on the Discord channel. Or you could just email us at the 5th Trooper Podcast at gmail.com. And we will definitely get to it and correct ourselves because we don't always get it right.
We sure don't.
So next, Nick and I are going to talk a little bit about what we're playing now. The two lists actually we played just last night in casual play, kind of our thoughts on them and break down the list a little bit. So I'm going to go first, and just everybody in podcast land knows this is an experimental thing I'm trying. It wasn't anything I fully expected to be successful on any level. I was just playing around, and mostly what it comes from is I'm sure everybody now is exhausted of me telling them that I play Vader and how much I love Vader. And what I was really trying to do is just find something supplemental on the other end of the battlefield or as part of my list to kind of fill it out, because even with the ATST that I was running, I don't know, I feel like something was missing. And so I'm just playing around, like trying not to take myself too seriously with this list and just playing. And so, I have Vader with Saber Throw and Force Push. I threw 3 units of Stormtroopers in there with the DLT-19s. Then I threw a set of Snowtroopers in there with Flame Trooper and grappling hooks. I have the ATST with the 88 Twin Light Blaster Cannon, and I know this was a weird choice, but I just threw a random bike in there. Just to kind of round out and get some speed and maybe have like a third turn play that I feel like, and it worked. I mean, listen, it didn't do well, everybody, just so you know, and I'm sure a lot of you are listening to the podcast going, yeah, no duh. But, like I said, it was experimental. I will say that I missed the troopers. I will say that, number one, my ATST rolled like trash. Through both games I played last night, but specifically the first one, it didn't roll a single shield or surge the whole time, and I don't know, it was just a unlucky dice draw on that. But I felt like overall it just made me realize how strong red defense dice are. Because in both instances, when Vader or the troopers were getting attacked, they were surviving a ton, and they're just like, nope, you're not getting us. We got red defense die. But the ATST, like I said, died real quick. But I will say, having Vader on the field, the Flame Troopers, the ATST, all drew attention away from the bikes for sure. And the bikes got to do some actually really good work. So, Nick, you didn't play me, but just your thoughts on the list first.
Well, I like how you keep like tiptoeing about the holes I poked in it when you sent me the list originally on Thursday.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, I don't like bikes in this. Bikes are very aggressive. And so I redid his list. And I'm just like, I would like to see this. And I took out the bikes. I geared out the ATST because if you're playing an ATST, I feel like I've never actually played it, but the mortar launcher just seems so good because I like suppressing things. And then I just added more troopers. Another set of DLT-19s with stormtroopers with DLT-19s.
I think you threw an HH-12 in there too, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Just to sort of hedge your bets on like what can do impact, because then
Yep.
you have the ATST and then you have the one troopers, and I would really like to see how well they do. How did you feel about stormtroopers with just a DLT-19?
Oh, great! I didn't have a problem.
Because I know you weren't playing the extra troop, but you were just playing without the DLT-19.
Yeah. Well, I was doing both. I tried both ways. The 4 and the DLT played fine. And then after our conversation with Evan on the last podcast about pulling out, so I'm trying to remember. Our first objective was the base contact with the terrain with the objective in order to gain the objective. I can't remember the name off the top of my head right now, but I'm sure somebody will send us a note on it. But basically, your unit leader has to be in base contact with the terrain that has the objective token on it in order to claim that terrain, and whoever has the most unit leaders. Okay. So, I was using that tactic that Evan had brought up that someone used against him, where I was leaving my unit leader behind cover, and then I was putting up my units. And so that worked well. I didn't really struggle with any of the stormtroopers. The dice were really good with the defense on the red. So, I mean, it almost made me question maybe even, one of my thoughts that went through my head in both my games last night was, ATST is crazy strong, and I get it. It's really good, and I love it. But I'm almost wondering, what a Vader and all troops list would look like.
Mm-hmm.
Like just Vader, 6 troops, maybe 2 of them are snow troopers with flamethrowers, and then a mix between DLT-19s and HH-12.
You would need those
stormtroopers.
HH-12s, otherwise you have 0 impact.
But then you probably have to throw the bikes in, because you're gonna need some more points there. But that's.
Well, you don't need them. It's like you're saying I'll probably throw in the bikes, then your list looks similar to a lot of other lists. If you just want to do Vader and troopers and that's it, that would be really interesting.
I'd have to look at the points and see how they deck out. I might have to go, I would probably have to go full squadrons with DLTs and HH-12s, and then I could probably give them like impact or concussion grenades
Or just more squads.
Yeah, that's true. But you're limited at 6 on troopers, so I'd have to look at
That's
that
true.
and see.
This list will be better once you have the scout troops.
Yes. Yeah. Oh God, I can't wait for those. Just so tired waiting for those in Boba Fett. Like, I think those are really going to shift the lists on the Empire, just like Han and the Commandos are doing for the Rebels right now. And so, speaking of which, and that's a amazing segue by me.
It
that
really
was
is.
unintended. But let's talk about.
No, you can own that. It's fine.
Let's talk about Nick's list. So, Nick, why don't you walk us through what you're playing?
Okay, so we keep with Luke and Leia. Originally, when I was doing this list, the point is I wanted to test out the commandos, both the strike team and the full complement.
So what cards are you playing with Luke?
So with Luke, we're playing Force Push and Battle Meditation, the classic thing that I've been using for a while. With Leia, we're playing the Esteemed Leader. With the Fleet Troopers, we were trying out the Barrage Troop, which I didn't really use it to its full effect, but it did feel good to have that option of both Blast and Impact. Rebel Troopers with just the Z6. I slimmed them down like we were talking about in the last podcast. They didn't feel all that different. Like, they still felt really good. And I was also messing around with the same thing of keeping my unit leader behind. cover while sending out the rest of the troops because I was in range of an ATST and I didn't want the whole unit to get destroyed. And that worked out really well because, again, I'm rolling my Z6 and 3 other troopers, and that still felt really good. Like, I still did some serious damage. And then we had the Rebel Commandos. That's not right. So the Rebel Commandos had the sniper, not the proton charge saboteur, and then for the strike team, and then the Rebel Commandos had the proton charge.
Oh, I gotcha. Yep. Okay.
The duck and cover and the emergency sims. I didn't use those a lot. I definitely didn't use the emergency sims. We played one game, and my Rebel Commandos, I got a little out there with them. They died really quickly. And then from there, I played my classic ATRT with the laser cannons. Now, the big point of this list was to try out the commandos. I didn't put in Han. I wanted to, but I really don't want to get rid of Luke. Like, Han sounds amazing. I've seen him played. He looks amazing.
Yep.
But Luke is like this wild card of he can do so much, and he's so threatening, and he's so versatile.
Yeah.
I don't even play him well. Like, I forget that he can shoot because my goal is always to get him in the middle of things.
Okay.
And engaged with a set of troopers without killing them. Like,
Yep.
I want a lot of them to die, but I don't want all of them to die. So other people can't shoot me. And then to force push whatever's in front of me away, and then go off to another set of troopers and just keep like daisy chaining, so I can't get shot at and I just murder things.
Yeah. So just to go back a little bit, so for people that maybe haven't seen the commandos yet, you want to walk us through just a couple of the emergency stims or whatever you're comfortable, maybe duck and cover, and just kind of.
So sure. First of all, the strike team with the snipers is amazing. It is so good because like I said in previous podcasts, I like to play the suppression game, and that's what they're good at. They're good at getting a shot in, getting suppression on things, take away actions from troops from everywhere. You just plant them in a spot and they just shoot. I don't know if I want 2 of them. I think you might get diminishing returns if you have 2 strike teams with the sniper rifle, because you're not necessarily always going to have 2 things to shoot at. And then from there, I wanted to try out the proton charge saboteurs. I didn't think they would be great. It didn't feel right, but I always want to try them. Again, I really messed up with them, and they didn't do much, but they also didn't feel great. It felt like I was forcing them to do things rather than just playing them naturally. Like, I was trying to get them somewhere to get that proton charge down, and then try and get them out of there so they can detonate it. And they feel very situational to being just straight bad. So, and I don't want to just call them bad, but we're leaning that way right now.
So, and I'll say, I played a Rebel list last night that had them as well, and he was trying to plant the I'm sorry, what was it again?
The proton charge?
Yeah, the proton charge, yeah.
Sorry.
He was trying to plant the proton charge by my ATST, and he just put himself in a tough situation because I had those stormtroopers with the flame trooper with grapple hooks, and I just came up and over the terrain and I just burned him alive, and took out his whole unit. So I felt like same thing, like I was almost forced to get those into play to get that detonator out.
Yes, exactly, and that's exactly how I felt too. Now, if I play commandos, which I probably will, they seem amazing. I think I just put a sniper unit in there. They would play very differently. Like I just said, I don't think I would put into strike teams with snipers, but a commando unit with a sniper seems like it could do a lot. If you're in a situation where there's an objective token and you and your opponent are going for it, like they each have a unit going for it, you can use the sniper to just get suppression tokens on them and hopefully take away actions from across the board, and you win that race because you're going to end up getting there first. And that's how I see that being played. The other reason why I would play the commandos is duck and cover plus low profile. That seems really good. Like, because the biggest problem with the rebels is they die really easily. They roll white defense dice. They can't be caught out in the open. These guys feel like just better rebel troopers in that you get in a situation like that, you get shot on, You activate duck and cover, get the suppression token. Low profile gives you cover 2 in the middle of nowhere, and that feels like that will be very, very strong. It feels like these guys are just going to be able to move around the battlefield and do whatever they want, kind of similar to Luke, but without quite as much power.
Yeah, the sniper team is the strike team there. I played against it last night too, and it was annoying, man.
Like, the sniper unit is very good.
Yeah,
like it's almost, if you roll with an aim token, you're basically always going to get a hit off.
Yes.
You're always going to do some sort of damage because of the pierced 1, because of the high velocity. It's just always doing something.
Yeah, and they didn't. Yeah, the pierced 1. See, it's hard for me to deal with that on the other end. You know, I have it with Vader.
Pretty sure it's hard for anybody.
Yeah. So it's hard to swallow that particular spoonful of medicine. But yeah, that was really strong. And I mean, they changed, for me anyways, they changed the way I thought about the battlefield. And actually I even made a few mistakes. I forgot that they were there and what they could do. You know, being the first time I really played against them, and like I was just like, oh crap, you know what I mean? I put a couple of my troopers in harm's way that I probably could. It's
gonna be really hard to not put them in harm's way.
Yeah,
with a sniper looking down, because snipers, just like in real life, they're pretty dangerous, and they pin you down, which is what they do.
Yeah. Well,
and it translates very well into the game.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I'll say, and I know we've said this a few times, but man, I do love they just. Not just Star Wars, but like the way this game plays and stuff, it's just so good, and it just, a lot of it makes sense, and you're just like, yeah, that's exactly how that would work out, you know. And I really like that about this game.
Me too. Also, fleet troopers, like, if you don't play them, if you think they're not good, I definitely say try them. There are situations where I've had where they're just really bad, they don't do much, but the situations where they're good, they are amazing. Last night was one of those situations. We were playing with the rapid redeployment, and I just dropped a set of fleet troopers behind the objective token that they controlled, and they just came out and they almost one-shotted Veers. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's really nice. Okay, so that was our list. You know, Nick and I we're still trying to figure out what makes sense for us, and then, you know, with all the new stuff coming out too, we're trying to add that in as well. And so this is going to kind of segue us into our next topic here. And this actually came about last night, and basically what we're going to be talking about here is play style. Nick and I got in a little bit of a conversation, heated debate, if you will, about competitive versus casual. And I don't mean the like competitive like tournament versus a casual time, but actually when you're playing, being competitive or just playing casually. And you know what, Nick, I'll let you start, since, you know,
sure,
this was kind of your idea, and so we'll discuss you. So just as a primer, you know, Nick is on the competitive side, so
very much so.
We're going to let him talk to that a little bit.
So I've played a lot of games competitively, not like big stage, more like locally competitively, but I played competitively a lot. And I after all those repetitions, if you want to get better at the game, I've found that in order to do that and be consistent, you basically have to play like you're always in a tournament. You always want to get those sort of like muscle memories down of how to play, how to look at a battlefield, how to look at situations, and just always take it seriously. Like, you can still have fun, but always be thinking of how you can make the best play possible in any given situation, in any environment.
Yeah.
And you, of course, want to have fun.
So
you go and you'll charge Vader at an entire army by himself, and I just start losing my mind. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, and so, you know, the way this conversation started last night, I think I was in my second game, and Nick was looking at the battlefield, and I knew what was happening on the battlefield, but Nick looked at the battlefield and he saw that I was winning, and I could easily take that game. But I had made a couple decisions that Nick wanted to talk to me later about, because he felt like they were not competitive enough for him. And So
they weren't competitive at all.
They weren't competitive.
Well, first of all, we should set
at
it
all.
up.
Yeah.
It was, I don't remember the name of Battlefields and Objectives, but it's the one where you
Intercept the transmissions. Yeah, that's the one we
Okay,
did.
so it's the one with the 3 objectives across the board. Each at the end of round 2 and 4, you gain points, and at the end of the game, you gain points. And he controlled 2 of them, which means you're winning. And Vader was at the one at the farthest end of the battlefield from his opponent, was locked down by a set of troops. It was fine.
Yep.
And then the middle one had Han on it with a bunch of troops, and then he was marching Vader into the opposite direction of the objective towards the rebel army.
Yep.
And letting Luke just do. I'm letting Han do whatever he wanted to do. I'm just like,
so this is where Nick's eye started to twitch a little bit, and I could see the steam coming out of his ears from like a cartoon. And here's my explanation for that. This was a casual night, number one. I went in with an experimental list, and as Nick would explain it, even if it's an experimental list for him, he's going to put himself the whole time in a situation where he's going to win, and he's going to do everything he can to win those objectives or win that game. My thought process sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes is I like to put myself into situations where I know it's a terrible idea, but I just want to see what's going to happen, because for me, and maybe this is just my learning style, and maybe this is just who I am and how my brain works, but I want to see it fail, or I want to see if it'll succeed in a no-win scenario. And I think for me, just personally, it helps me understand the limitations of the units and some of the characters and some of the game to play. And so last night, looking at it, I knew where I stood. I knew that I absolutely, because I was playing a rebel, and he had the 2 snipers, he had the commandos, he had Leia, Han, 2 ATRTs with lasers, and 2 rebel units with the Z6.
Let's paint the whole picture of what was actually going on. He was marching Vader into open cover into 2 ATRTs with laser cannons, at least 2 units.
Let's back it up a little bit. So that was at the end. Yeah, that was towards the end. That's what I was doing towards the end. But leading up to that, I had locked down 2 positions, 2 of the objectives. There wasn't any doubt. I had my ATST keeping almost his entire army busy, besides a set of troopers in Han who were trying to come out to the other 2 objectives. And even though my ATST was rolling literally all blanks, no shields or surges the entire time, like for 3 straight rounds, and it died. But I kept his whole army at bay. We were getting into round 4, and I wanted to see what would happen.
Well, I think that's the other mistake. You expect white dice to roll anything.
Yeah. Okay, that's
We've
fine.
also had that conversation.
But I should also, I mean, it's less than 30. It should be 33% or 30%.
See, I go in expecting them to be blank.
That's okay. That's fine. I didn't expect them to roll shields the whole time, but I did expect them to at least do it once.
No, I don't expect
And it
any
didn't,
of that.
and that's fine. So anyway, I guess the conversation here is, and where we're coming up with the discussion is, because this was a casual night, because this was an experimental list, I'm really not that concerned about winning. I'm more concerned about getting comfortable with my list and trying to see what its limitations are, and just maybe have fun and just see what Vader can do. Yeah, I know what I was marching him into, but I think it was just fun to see that and to see what he could handle.
Which was?
I mean, he didn't die. He kept rolling shields. My rolls were really good with Vader.
So did he make it to that army?
Yeah, he did, and he took out one of the trooper units, and Leia was doing that thing where she tosses the troopers in front of the damage. But then I think it was getting late, so we called it because the store. But he would have died. I know that. We all know that. But yeah, so I think this comes back. We'll bring this back around. Topic is competitive versus casual, and I think for Nick, Nick's always looking to win, which is great, and he's always trying to get his list to win and to see the win scenarios. And I think that's how, if you're going to be competitive, and Nick wins a lot of the tournaments we have up here, so, that's clearly working for him. And I guess for me, just personally, my style is more because I haven't really found a list that I like or that I'm 100% comfortable with. And I'm sure you guys have heard us talk about me particularly talk about how I don't really like Veers, and the bikes list isn't really my style. So I'm still trying to find that list that's my style. So when I go into a casual night, I don't care. Like if I win, that's nice, but I'm going to do some experimenting and go into some no-win scenarios because I just want to see what the list does, and I want to see what it's capable of.
See, I don't think it's the list. I think it's more of a problem of you don't settle on a list and therefore don't play it enough, and therefore you don't see the synergies and the just the overall strategy, which Imperials are good at. Like we were talking about this last night too, is that the Imperials feel like they have two distinct strategies. There's a very aggro list of Veers and the 3 bikes, and then a very control list, which is Vader and anything really. But Vader and Flame Troopers and the ATSD, they feel very control-y. And then the Rebels, it's really just good stuff. It doesn't feel like they have a good overall strategy that you can put into play. It's just the best stuff that they could possibly put on the field. But like, if you want to get really good with a list, you have to keep playing it over and over again, and then see the weaknesses and
yeah. Well, but I don't think that's. I guess that's the difference here. Is I'm not. Yes, I understand what you're saying, and I get that. I'm not trying to become good with a list. I'm trying to understand how my style of play and how my thought process works with this game, and in particular, the Empire. And so I haven't played a list more than 2 or 3 times because none of them feel right for me. I just don't feel comfortable with any of them. And it's not, and I understand what you're saying about repetition with lists. That's how you become comfortable with it. But what I'm saying is even from the get-go, just from the planning stages, from the strategic stage of looking at the board, at the board state and what I have, just nothing has felt right. Like I feel like I'm missing something for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know like Veer's 3 bikes, great list. I know it works for a ton of people. I'm just trying to still figure out where do I fit in to the game and how, and I would say even with monkeying with the list, I don't do terrible. Like, of course I'm not crushing it because like you said, I don't have repetition and I don't have comfortability with any one list, but I think that if I can keep doing, and this is just my own mindset, I guess. I feel like if I can keep doing this, I'm kind of just testing out where I'm comfortable, that when I do settle in with my list, then that's when I'll really start, taking it to the next level as far as gameplay and seriousness and competitive.
So what it really sounds like to me is that there are units that you don't like to play, but you have to because there are very few options. Like you really like Vader.
Yes.
You really like the Snowtroopers. You don't particularly like Stormtroopers, even with the DLT-19s.
Yeah, they're just okay. They serve their purpose. So okay. So for me, I have Vader, love Vader and Snowtroopers, and I think you and anybody that has played me can attest that I use them very well, and that I have them down pat. I know how they work. I know how to use them for my style, and I know how to use them against my opponents. I would say as they should be, the Stormtroopers with the DLTs are a mid-level, right, mid-manager in the office here, and they do their job and they do it well. I'm missing something, and maybe the Commandos and Boba Fett will fill this. That's what I'm hoping based on their looks. I'm missing something on the other end that feels right for my game style. I'm not saying for the game. It's not a slight on the game. It's for me. And the bikes, they don't work for me at all. And the ATST, it works, but I still get really I understand what you were saying about the white dice and the probabilities, but it's just like I'm like, God, this thing, I just can't get it to function and maybe I'm thinking about it. I am thinking about it wrong, but it's the fact that in my head, for some reason, I'm looking at it as like a tank, right? Like I should be able to take this thing and march it wherever I want to march it, and it's going to do a bunch of damage, and yeah, it's going to end up blowing up, but it'll distract them for a while. And I just find that, and maybe with adding Vice on and having Arsenal 4, maybe that would change it, but it just feels
You're not looking for
not
a
there.
list that you're comfortable with. You're looking for a list that you like. So there's two kind of players.
Well,
There's
yeah.
the player who play what they like, and they play it over and over again. They play the same thing over and over, and they get good with it to the point where they're competitive. And then there's people who are competitive who just play the best stuff. They put the best things in, and it gives them an edge from the get-go. They don't necessarily like it, but they know it wins. You're looking for a list that you like, and there are not enough units that you like.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't disagree with that at all. Yeah. And because, yeah, I'm sure if I played Veer 3 bikes and I have a concept of the game that I could, sure, after a few repetitions and a few games, sure, I could start winning with it for sure and bring it to the tournaments. But I want to like what I'm doing while I'm doing it. I don't want to, I don't want to just have a list that I'm like, man, I don't like this. 'Cause I think that's how you, for me, I don't know in general, but for me, that's how I muscle my way out of games. Is this happened to me during Magic the Gathering. I had that great list, great deck that was a black red aggro burn deck, and it was fun and it was good and it was everything I wanted it to be, and I did really well with it. And then as it rotated, I couldn't find that same energy that I had with that deck. And so, yeah, I would agree that I am definitely looking for something not only that's good and I know can win, but also that I enjoy playing at the same time.
Who are you shooting at with your ATSD? Just out of curiosity.
Just everything, mostly. No, I try. So it depends on the objectives. So, we talked specifically last night, I was trying to focus on troops, and I understand that the ATRTs were going to rip me apart. But I was hoping, in my head, and I'll just explain it, and listen, you guys I'm sure, are going to write in and tell me how I'm wrong here. But
I'm going to.
yeah, and Nick's going to write now, so you guys may not have to. But here was my thought process. Rounds 1 and 2, if I could survive with the ATST, rounds 1 and 2, I was going to try. He had 2 troop units over that. He had the snipers way up on the other side of the board. So I figured if I could take out his troops, it was a troops only objective, so they wouldn't be able to take the objective. So that'd be one less thing I have to worry about. Then I would focus on the ATRTs. And as you pointed out last night, that the ATST shreds ATRTs, so I probably should have focused on them first, and then and then focused on the troops. But I think I know we're talking about what actually happened versus hypothetically what could have happened. But even with that strategy, I would have, and let's say I kept Vader back and I did what I should have done with Vader and the other troops, I still would have won that. And I was keeping his 60-70% of his army occupied.
Mm-hmm.
And through round 4. So that was more of my thought process.
So right now, the biggest advantage that the ATST has is there isn't a lot of impact as out of the Rebels or really out of anybody. There isn't a lot of impact in the game, and people aren't playing a ton of it because most people, at least before recently, were not playing the ATSD. There wasn't a lot of reason to include it. So once you get rid of the impact, like the ATRT, you still have to deal with Luke. That's a problem. But once you get rid of those impacts, your ATST is just going to stand there and they're not going to be able to do anything about it because armor. So if you get rid of the things that take away armor, then he can then just go ahead and murder all the troops.
Yeah, and I understand that. I think it's just one of those things. I think when I looked, and it probably was wrong, but when I looked at the battlefield, that's just what felt right at that moment. So that's what I was trying to do, and it worked for a while, and then the ATST got destroyed.
By
actually, it was by troops.
Somebody rolling some natural crits.
Yeah. which was super annoying. But it happens, right? That's part of the whole thing.
It does
You know, I
happen.
think the ATRTs definitely helped. I'm not saying they didn't do anything. They did their job, but they weren't rolling as hot as his troops were for some reason. And I think that's one of the things with this game, right? The dice rolls are kind of change up everything.
They
Sometimes.
make things interesting.
Yeah. And so, so that was my thought. And so, let us know what you guys think about competitive versus casual, like how your learning style is. We'd love to hear and just see how everybody's playing. And if you're casual, Nick will tell you you're wrong. And if you're competitive, I will just shake my head and go, okay.
That's really mean.
I'm just kidding.
I welcome people to tell me that I'm wrong.
But yeah, so, write us or let us know on any of the social media. We're out there. So we'd love to hear from you. And that's it for this week. We'll catch up to you next week. As always, you can find us at thefifthtrooper.com. You can hear the podcast at podcast.fifthtrooper.com. We're on Facebook and Twitter at Fifth Trooper. Or you can email us, thefifthtrooperpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody.
Take it easy, everybody.
Join us next week for another edition of the Fifth Trooper Podcast.